It's 2:30 on January 22nd, 2018, and we're having our monthly meeting of the Board of Elections at the Board of Elections office in Gaithersburg. We have a quorum, and we're going to begin our meeting. First item is the approval of minutes from the November 20th, 2017 board meeting. And does someone have a motion?
I move we accept the minute as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? So those minutes are unanimously approved. We do have one change on the agenda. We're going to have
Executive.
I'm just saying what time it is. We're going to have an executive meeting after the public meeting regarding future budget. Okay. Next, we're going to proceed to public comments. Who's got the list?
Carol Petzel requested to speak to the board.
Carol, why don't you come up? Welcome. Alan, maybe Carol can sit over here. Is anybody sitting there?
Lisa's away right now.
Yeah.
Usually, Lisa.
We're welcoming Carol Petzel, former delegate. Welcome to our meeting. Have a seat. Welcome.
The instructions say I'm supposed to spell my name.
No, that's okay.
You're well known.
Petzold, P-E-T-Z-O-L-D, and I'm a longtime resident of Precinct 1346, and I'm encouraging you to change the polling place back to its original site, the former English Manor School, where we voted from the early 60s until 2010. English Manor closed. The space was leased by the Children's Learning Center, a private school, and we continue to vote there. It was a convenient location. People walked within our precinct. Then the polling place was moved to Barnsley Elementary, which is now under construction and unavailable as a polling place. You voted to move to the rec center, which is further away than Barnsley, without realizing that the English Manor facility is reopening as the MCPS Administrative Center. There are no students there, but just administrative individuals. MCS moved the staff for the infants and toddlers program using the first floor classrooms. The all-purpose room, which was the polling place, is undergoing minor renovations that will be completed in, and that's a change to what you've got. It will be completed in late May or early June, according to the MCPS project manager, Michael Spur. I talked to him as late as 12:10 today. I was eating lunch when he called. The building has always been ADA compliant, never having a step to climb at the front door. There's parking, though many folks will walk because of the school's location. It will be available in November as well. The deed to the school is held by MCPS. I'm asking you to move our 1346 polling place back to our neighborhood, to the English Manor site, the only public building in the precinct. We enjoyed having our polling place within the precinct and walking to vote. It will be a time saver for voters to vote closer to home, to avoid the congestion near the shopping center and the confusion of having two polling places side by side. Wood Middle School 1352 polling place is adjacent to the rec center, which is proposed as our polling place. We have until March the 27th, for 13 weeks ahead of the election, for you to finalize polling places. The discussion I had today, I went over to the school to verify that it would be ready for the election. Talked both to the building on-site construction person and to Mike Spur, his supervisor. And Mike Spur's final comments to me were, yes, it will be ready in early June. And I'll be happy to answer your questions if that's appropriate.
Yeah, and from the information I've received, and I think some board members, I think there's some confusion as to when it would be ready. I think, Margaret, have we gotten information?
We have a presentation to give the board later in the meeting. So I would like to,
Wouldn't it be appropriate to have that now, since we're discussing the issue?
is Chris in here?
She just had that in the grab.
Go get her. While we're waiting for Chris to come back, and could we hear from Lynn Garland
Sure.
while we're waiting for
Yeah.
her to also set that up?
Sure.
Lynn?
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
I may still have questions for Carol, but
Yeah.
I guess they can wait until we have the presentation.
Yeah.
Welcome, Lynn. Have a seat.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Let me introduce myself. I've worked on an unaffiliated basis as a volunteer in election accuracy and verification issues for over a decade. I focus mostly on voting system security and voting system standards, both in Maryland and nationwide. I was a physics major at Harvard, and then I worked in electronics, and then I went to MIT in business and operations management, and I worked for years in manufacturing operations for a large defense contractor. I have been for years since Maryland started been very concerned about the online ballot delivery system. It concerns me more and more as the system has been extended to be allowed to be accessed by all voters, and the use has increased. Most states limit the online ballot delivery to those required by federal law, to military and overseas voters and voters with disabilities. Maryland is the only state, other than Alaska and Washington State, that, as far as I know, that allows all voters to access it online. And Maryland's is the most insecure absentee ballot system in the whole country because of this. Maryland is the only state that has three things in combination. They have no excuse absentee voting, they allow all voters to use the system, accept the system, and they do not have any signature check on the back end. All the authentication they have is on the front end, which is not secure enough. So it's this combination of these three things that makes Maryland so insecure. And many computer scientists have written about the insecurity of the system directly to the State Board of Elections. But what hasn't happened is the State Board of Elections, it's not just a security issue that's the only issue. There are other issues as well, and I wanted to mention them because it affects you guys a lot, as you know. First of all, on these voter-marked online ballot delivered ballots, the voter might not know it, but it's not their ballot that ends up being counted. Their ballot gets duplicated by the local Board of Elections, and it's a duplicated that's valid, but counted. It's not the voter-verified ballot. That in itself is a big problem. But it also has caused a tremendous administrative burden on this local board as well as other local boards. I was here during the canvass last year, and you guys had 3 rooms full of people manually duplicating the ballots for 5 days. That is a tremendous burden. If all of a sudden twice as many people decided to use this system, how would you guys deal with that burden? But if 3 times a minute, there is no upper limit. So it's something that could really affect you. The election results could be very long in coming in, and it would be very, very hard to make sure that all these duplication efforts were accurate. And it's not just a duplication effort that is a problem, I believe, for the local boards. This causes a lot of management effort and a lot of problem receiving the envelopes of the ballots. When people get their mailed ballots, it comes to them with a return envelope that has a pre-written address and a barcode saying who it's from. So when you guys receive those mailed normal traditional ballots, you can easily wand them in, track those absentee ballots, and know who it's from. And I believe that's a lot harder when you have some scribble that's somebody's return address. They may or may not put the tracking number on the address, so that's another administrative problem. So I just want to stop by saying at last week's State Board of Election meeting, one of the board members said that we've never heard from any of the counties that this system causes them any problems. So I urge you, if this system does cause you administrative problems, that you let the board formally know what those problems were, how it affects you in an administrative way, what it costs you, what it costs the county, and what it costs in terms of management effort, and how it might cause less accuracy because you have to figure out who the envelope might be from, and because you have to duplicate these ballots. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn.
I think we're going to be taking up this issue a little later in the agenda, aren't we? Yeah, it comes in a couple places, so, if you can stay.
I will try to stay. Thank you.
Kevin, do we know, did we ever find out whether this could be done by a reg change by the state board, or does it have to require legislation
It would require legislative,
to limit the availability of
to
it?
limit the availability.
Yeah.
I think the state board can do it. The state board has done it before. There was a time period when there was a question as to, and I forget which state board it was, but raised concerns about some of the security issues, and there was federal litigation surrounding the online ballot access, and it was limited to military and overseas voters. And just for the record, so the record is clear, and I'm almost certain, I'll go back and look, but I think I'm the one who wrote it. This board has complained about the administrative
Absolutely.
cost
Absolutely.
associated with it, and I believe, in fact, we've given a per ballot cost it takes to actually duplicate each one of these ballots. And I'm almost certain that occurred, and Jessica's nodding her head back there, that occurred after the 2016 election cycle, when there were so many ballots that needed to be duplicated. And we did have 3 rooms of canvas teams doing solely duplication for many, many days.
We need to get that letter out.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
Add to it and
surprised.
resend it.
I attended that state board meeting, and when the board member said that, I sort of.
Which
Do you
board
remember who
member
it was, Lynn?
It was P.J. Hogan, I believe.
It was PJ that said that?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was PJ.
I
which
think
was
we need to get that
disappointing.
letter back out and
Yeah, we could send it.
then add to it.
I mean, he's in Montgomery
Yes,
County.
you're right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
So-
I will track it down
Please,
and
yes.
find out. But I'm certain a letter did go out after the
Yeah, I remember that.
2016
Remember,
election.
Yeah.
Bless you.
So when are we discussing this? On
It's
the
under
agenda?
state board, and I think there's also something under
Yeah.
the attorney.
Yeah.
Okay.
so Chris is here. Chris?
Chris, we'd like to see the presentation on precinct 1346.
Alright, turn off the lights.
The party's over.
Nap time.
Carol, can you see from there?
Yes,
Can you see? Well,
kind of does it askew. Is that? Are you, okay. Can everyone see?
Thank you.
Alright, we'll have to advance a little bit, I believe.
Yep.
This is precinct 1346, and at public request, we have a request for a change. In the first part of this presentation will show you what we looked at as an alternative for 1346 in 2018. And it's Bauer Drive Community Rec, and the board approved it November 2017. These were the statistics. We had 2,200 registered voters with a turnout in 16 of almost 45%. Barnsley is under construction. That was the reason for the move. Bauer is adjacent to the precinct. It's ADA compliant, and electioneering is permitted. There is adequate room size and available parking. This was the building that we considered. This is the map showing the location. Barnsley was 2016, and we're proposing and have approved Bauer as the location for 2018.
Chris, could you outline which precinct in that map we're looking at?
We are considering hosting this location, 1346.
Okay. And are you
So
gonna
that's
shift?
really the precinct we're discussing, not the
Correct.
one
Not
that's
the one that has
highlighted.
all the highlights,
Yeah.
that's the precinct next to it.
Correct.
Okay.
Shall I go on? And our entrance, our handicap parking, our no electioneering zone. The room itself, approximately 3,000 square feet. And we looked at English Manor as an alternative. It is an MCPS administrative building. In its earlier life, it was an elementary school. And it has been vacant over the last several years after Children's Learning Center moved out. English Manor will be an administrative building. We're serving, again, 2,200 voters with about a 45% turnout. Lucy Barnsley's under construction. This particular site is in precinct, it's ADA compliant, electioneering would be permitted, good parking in 2020, but we will be sharing with administrative staff. Anticipated adequate room size. It will be what was referred to as the all-purpose room. It is being renovated and will be considered a conference room, a meeting room. There will be several uses of that room. Excuse me. Location, English Manor's 4511 Bester Drive in Rockville. Now, again, we're talking about precinct 1346. We have approved using Bauer. The proposed change would be English Manor. This is an aerial, and the entrance to the building is behind those trees that are in the circle. A parking will be reconfigured in summer of 2018. This would be the no electioneering zone. This is the parking lot as it exists now, which is limited to staff right at the moment.
That's the whole parking lot?
That's the parking lot right now. They will be reconfiguring the exterior to the site in the spring and in the summer. That's looking at it from one direction. This is looking from the end out to the street of the same parking lot. This is where the majority of the people are parking right now. This is Bester Drive. When I went, I needed to park on the street. This is looking the other direction. Parking is allowed on both sides of the street. This is looking from the front door out to the street and at the handicap parking spaces. There are 3 available. I don't have a photo. When I was there, the building's under construction and I was not allowed to visit the room because of the liability. And our challenges will be Lucy Barnsley is under construction. We won't be able to use that site. The proposed site, English Manor, is under construction. There's limited parking and renovations ongoing through the summer of 2018. I have information saying that the building will be under construction till mid-June. And there is always the possibility in construction that it could be delayed. It is not a school. Schools will take priority. If they have construction issues in the school construction area, this will be at the end of the priority list and could potentially be delayed further. And the construction deadline or projected deadline completion is June, mid-June, but that doesn't include the outdoor areas, what they call the site construction. The parking and all of that will be done after June. Are there questions?
Al?
Yes.
How many parking places will there be after the construction?
He told me that they were revamping both sides of the building, so I'm thinking that there will probably be double of what we see now.
And do you know how many staff work there now?
Right now, there are only limited staff. It's the infant and toddlers, but I was informed that there would be 5 different agencies in there when everyone moved in. But they don't intend to move the other agencies in until completion of the project.
Chris, Carol Petzel, former delegate, Carol was given some information that contradicts when we were told that the construction would be done.
I spoke to the chief operating officer, Ms. McGuire, while we were eating lunch.
She's not the chief operating officer.
Chief of staff.
She's the staff for the chief
Staff.
operating officer.
Yeah. And
Her boss is the chief operating officer.
Okay. I spoke to her while we were having lunch today, and the information that I shared is what she has shared with us
as of today?
as of today.
Did she explain what the discrepancy was between the information that we had otherwise heard and that?
I explained to her that I'd been out to the building and had visited with the folks that were in and the project manager that was on site at that time. And she said that she felt that I had correct information, but that her deadline or her completion date is mid-June.
Right, but our election is in late June.
Yes, it is, but she was not guaranteeing that we would have. Certainly we are welcome to have the building, but she was not guaranteeing that the end of June the project will be completed.
May I say something?
Sure.
If they said mid-June, usually you have to give 2 weeks add to whatever you're doing because you never know construction.
I think our experience has been that where there's a will, there's a way. And you may recall that the circle in front of the executive office building miraculously got completed right before early voting.
Yeah, I'm saying that's why they add 2 weeks or subtract 2 weeks, then you have a window of 2 weeks. Sometimes you finish way before that, sometimes it takes longer.
Right. What I'm suggesting is that
It's not a guarantee this place will be ready by mid-June. We don't know.
And there's not a guarantee that it won't be. But
Yes.
I think in looking at our experience with the executive office building, I'm sorry that Mr. Subin's not here because this might be an issue for him to look into a little more for us to see, what this back and forth, why we're getting double information, and to put it on a priority item ahead of, maybe some of the other schools or whatnot, because it is needed.
Yeah.
Anything happening with schools isn't going to be needed until September. This is needed,
I may say
in
that
June.
the executive office building really 100% was not ready. They were still doing construction in that circle when we were having the earlier.
but
it
the
did not.
circle was open.
They
by
got
the
it-
time of
they
It
early
got
was
it
open, but they
completed.
still were working on it. They were still blocking portion of the construction, but we could use it because we had other parking area.
Well, as you know, we have a legal requirement to give priority to sites within the precinct and a legal requirement to give priority to public sites, and we have to have a reason to not give that priority.
Mr. President,
Excuse me, I wasn't done.
I'm sorry.
My own thought is that when you look at the map that Delegate Petzel shared with us, there's a pretty good distance from the former site to Barnsley, and even a longer distance to the rec center. And although it's not immediately obvious when you look at this map, you can't, you have to go around in order to get to the rec center. You can't just go straight through. So, and it is an inconvenience for those voters. And we certainly know from experience that the school system's first reaction when we have concerns about facilities is not necessarily their best. And that higher-ups in the school system have been very amenable to hearing from us about ways in which we can work together in order to improve the situation for our voters. And Jim has spoken very eloquently about the need to keep as many voters in their precinct as we can. So my own view would be that we should not immediately accept as a given that this is not doable or not reliable until we get more information and potentially hear directly from the school system.
You know, I agree with David. Since we have conflicting dates when it'll be ready, I think we've got to take it to the next level and just pinpoint as best we can when is it going to be ready. Because Carol's information and our information are adverse.
And Jim, it's not necessarily only when will it be ready, it's when can it be ready.
Yeah,
because it could
exactly.
very well be that under their current schedule, they can't do it, but that if they know it's important to us, that they might be able to do something about it, like Mary Ann was suggesting.
Well, and I think, given the superintendent, when we met on all the other issues we were dealing with, the schools and that we had to change so many locations, he certainly shared our, concern over that, and I think is amenable in situations where, something can be done to help us out. And, I think if need be, this is an issue that needs to be brought there.
Yeah, our next meeting is March 19th, and we have to get the precinct.
February.
I'm sorry.
February.
February 26th.
Yes, Margaret.
And we need to get the precincts nailed down by March 27th?
Yeah.
No, that's the first thing. Yes, there is a legal deadline that says March 27th, but in fact, we have to begin programming the electionware software that goes with preparing the entire election. We're supposed to have everything in on January 26th. We would be happy to talk to the school system and have those individuals provide you whatever necessary information you need to confirm whatever location you wish to select for precinct 1346. The issue, though, that we see is we have a potential construction completion for the interior of the facility, maybe mid-June, maybe earlier, maybe later. The other part of it is there is the outdoor construction, which is going to tear up a lot of the parking that is on site. When you saw the picture, you could already see that the asphalt and whatnot was very cracked up. We certainly have worked with the school system in the past. Essie McGuire is our liaison, and we've had success working with her. I will be happy to lay this over till next month so that you can decide whether or not you can utilize this site.
Carol, who did you speak to?
I spoke to Mike Spur, S-H-P-U-R. It's a strange spelling.
S-A-H?
He is the project manager for the school system for English management. I talked to him and he let me double check and he got back to me. The person he's in the office, MCPS Office of Construction. There's a Sean Gallagher who I did not talk to today, but I had talked to him earlier. And he is the receptionist is him, the liaison with the Board of Education. So I was kind of surprised that there's another one, but there is a lineup.
And we've talked to the same individuals.
I parked in the parking lot today, and yes, it is in bad shape. It's always been in bad shape. But there were not many people parked in there. It was a lot like the picture you took of the parking lot. The infants and toddlers program just has staff there. There are no children there. It's an administrative center.
May I ask, the infants and toddler program, it's the staff for, there's no infants and toddlers there, correct?
No, the infants and toddlers are served in their home or in the...
But there's none at the school
There are
at any
no
time?
children that
Okay,
come to
yeah.
school.
Okay, thank you.
Even though my children went to, all three went to school there, there are no children there now.
Totally, Pencil. In your experience, many people will walk, or used to walk to English Manor as opposed to drive there.
Yes.
When it was open, was it a walking precinct? People walk there a lot?
Yes. The only part of the precinct that didn't walk to English Manor is the Manor Club part that is on the north side of Belfry Road, but some of those would walk in. And mothers and strollers frequently came to the polling place with their strollers. The issue of food costume, the last thing that Mike Spur said to me was, yes, we will be finished, and I've got your back. So that tells me that if necessary, he would hurry it up.
Okay, so we're going to take another run at this.
Jim, I
Alex?
had a question. Margaret, when we met in November, was this among the polling place changes that we approved at that meeting?
Yes, you did.
And did we consider English Manor at the time?
No, we did not.
Okay, and was there an assumption built into the change that we didn't consider it, that we didn't think it was going to be ready, or we just, I'm just trying to remember, I don't remember this particular one, but...
I don't.
We were unaware, Mr. Vincent, that there was any change there. As far as we knew, until we started doing further research here recently, that the Children's Learning Center was still occupying the building. And that's the reason that we had moved out.
Which was because it was a private organization?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Can we put this on the agenda for next meeting?
Yes, we can.
Jim?
Yeah.
But what are we doing in the
What do
meantime?
we-
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, because if the board would want to relocate the polls there if it is available, I'm wondering whether it might be helpful for our discussions with the school system for you to get a vote of the board that says that. I realize that obviously we would have to confirm that it can be available on time. If the board doesn't want to do that, then obviously there's no point. But
I mean, if it's going to be ready and we're comfortable with that, it's in the
I'd
precinct.
like to make a motion.
Okay.
I would move that the board indicate that subject to the school superintendent's indicating that the building would be available on time, that we would move the polling place for 1346 to English Manor.
Second?
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, I would like to make sure that that parking lot is finished, so there's adequate parking, and that if it is not, that there's no danger to anybody walking there. It looks like there could be some danger. And I just want to make sure that somebody certifies to us that there's no potholes, no problems with what looked like a parking lot.
I don't think there's any commitment to get the parking lot done.
The parking lot, as soon as the interior construction is completed, they're moving to the outside, and they're going to begin the outside construction, in which the parking lot is going to be it's going to be fixed and reconfigured, and whatever's left will be fixed. Their parking lot will not be fixed by June 26th.
It actually sounds like we may want to ask that they not reconfigure the parking lot until after June 26th in order to have it as a parking lot.
Yeah.
I can tell you from my kids didn't go to English Manor, but they did go to Children's Learning Center for 1 year, and the parking lot has never been great. My kids went 20 years ago.
Well, that doesn't matter.
Right.
And that's 15 years ago.
More. Yeah.
And so if it hasn't been refinished in that time, there might be,
Yeah.
it just, when you showed it to me, it looked like some danger. It's simply a comment. I certainly would not want, if the parking lot isn't finished, and it does not look adequate to me, I certainly wouldn't want there to be any dangerous places in the parking lot if people were standing out giving out literature and people were walking from the neighborhood. I think that's a reasonable supposition that people should have, that there's no dangerous, rough, potholey places in the parking lot to walk over, or the driveways.
So should we...
Well, we used English Manor in the past as a voting precinct, right?
Not since 2008.
Was the parking lot the same
2010.
in 2008?
I'm sure you did it 2008. Yeah.
I mean, we used it with the existing
10
parking
years
lot
ago.
in the past, didn't we?
Well, that was 10 years ago.
10 years ago.
No, they moved it in
It
10
is
years
an
ago.
old building. It
So that means it was used in
was
2008.
erected in the late 1960s, early 1970s.
No, but David makes a point. You know, we are obligated, if we can, to put the precincts in the precinct. I mean, so that's,
I'm wondering whether the board might want to, in addition to having the superintendent indicate that the room's available, to also indicate that the facility is safe for use as a public
Yeah,
place.
yeah, I think so. I think
We
that
have
could be a part of it.
liability, yes.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's
Does that
reasonable.
address
Is he willing to do that, though?
Well, if he's not, then
No,
that
he would
comes
say
back to
no,
us
he
to
said
figure out
no.
what to do. I'd be surprised if he was not willing to say one way or the other.
For the construction people, we have to make sure they're not gonna be there at that point.
This gentleman seems to know.
I'm the precinct, Democratic precinct chair, and for 40 years.
And
Quite
Mr.
familiar
Kitzel.
with Walter. I would say the majority, Walter Petzel. The majority of people park on that street. Now, the unusual number on there, I think, because the parking lot isn't, there's more staff on the street. Normally, the neighborhood people park in their driveways. It's more convenient to park on the street than to actually to go into the parking lot.
You mean the street being Bestor Drive?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Unfortunately, when it was subdivision was laid out, it's the street on the other side of what is in Dabney Drive that was made the extra width that's required for school sites.
I mean, it seems that we
But
can
they
use
oriented
it.
it to Vesper because of the
It seems like if we can use it, we're obligated to use it. I would
Yeah,
think.
but what if it turns out that the renovation is delayed? Then what would we do? If it's mid-May, yeah, it's doable. But what if it slips?
Well,
I hear you.
We had the same issue with the executive office building, and the answer was you try to make sure it doesn't. And you deal with it when you deal with it.
Executive office, we were not doing inside construction, there was outside construction. This one is inside construction
Right.
and outside construction.
Right.
I'm not against it, I'm just explaining how the things is.
No, Alex,
So we
I mean,
are
that's
not,
the
we
risk.
don't have a guarantee inside will be finished on time or no, but that's why.
But I think it's worth the
she has to
follow-up.
talk, yes,
Margaret, I think it's worth the follow-up.
yes.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
motion?
You want to do your motion again?
Well, I wonder, would it be better to make the motion in February once we know the facts?
I was thinking that the motion would help to encourage the school system to do what it can to make it happen, which I think we know from experience they often need to hear from us.
I don't think so.
That was why I made the motion, and Mary Ann, I think, seconded.
Allison?
Chris, just one clarification. Is the English Manor School in 1346 or is it in 1345?
It's in 46.
It is in 46.
It's in the precinct.
Yeah, it's in the precinct.
Any thoughts on
The red
David's motion?
star, Allison, on the map. That's in precinct.
Got it.
It's in the precinct. So, Alex, you don't think a motion is necessary?
Well, I mean, I see what David's saying, but I'm sort of thinking. I mean, it's kind of phrased in the conditional.
Right, which it's phrased in the conditional, which allows us to get out of it if we need to, but it indicates very strongly what our intention is, which I think we need to do in order to encourage the school system to help us with this.
I guess even if it passes, we'd still have to have another motion at the next meeting to actually
Exactly.
make
Do
the
it.
change. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the information. Yeah.
Well, we would at least need to have the information that says,
Safe and all
yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly.
I don't see any harm in David's motion.
No, just.
Okay.
We are not saying that we
will
will accept it, no, we just said that let's find out the fact.
Do we have it written? Do we have a second?
I
The
second
exact
it.
Sure,
phrase
it's
in the
second.
motion.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No one.
We're going to check on that as well.
Do we have the exact phrasing in the motion or do we still need that?
So,
No, we haven't.
Maureen, you'll
Carol and Walt, thank you.
You'll
for
revisit
all your
this?
detailed work.
I guess so.
Thanks.
It's on the tape. That's how she does it.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Walter. Former delegate. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your interest. Thank you.
Just give me a second.
Okay. Are there any other public comments? Okay, let's put the lights on.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Margaret, your election director report?
All All right. You have a letter from Linkages of Learning to our coordinator, Roberto Zelaya. The staff gifted 22 families, and they're thanking the staff for their participation. Eric, did he disappear? Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay. Allison, if you want to introduce Eric, and Eric is our newest employee. He's the new program specialist in operations.
I'll let Eric introduce himself.
Welcome, Eric.
I'm Eric Olson. I'll be working with Chris in the operations unit. Just a quick summary of kind of what I've done. I was born up in Frederick. Went to college in Maryland, so spent a lot of my life in the Maryland area, in the D.C. area. I went to law school at Case Western Reserve University, and I'm a Maryland licensed attorney. But I graduated in 2008 when it was not the best time to get a law job, and ended up in elections and just really liked it and kind of stuck around with that. So I've spent the last 7 years working at the DC Board of Elections. I did a lot of different things in the election worker program and the operations program there. I developed our operations manual. I had to manage a staff of about 20 temp workers and train workers for election day and make sure we were prepared. I managed our call center and our support group sort of for all of our election day activities and through early voting. And I know that's something that Margaret has indicated she'd like me to work on here as well. I was able in my time there to, we cut our lines in DC by about 40% from 2012 to 2016 after I took over that program, and we cut our overtime in about half. So we were able to get better results with less. And I also received a grant from the Knight Foundation for some of the work I did in developing a data team to go out and gather data on election day, and then work with a lot of different jurisdictions in Minnesota, North Carolina, British Columbia to give them feedback and help with how to sort of manage their operations and put data to use in a way that would make their election process more effective and make voters wait less time and kind of put some of the math behind the election process in terms of staffing and supplies and how you make that all work. So looking forward to working here. I've learned a lot and been here about 2 months, I guess, and I've learned a lot and looking forward to, it was great to meet all you guys today, and thank you so much for the luncheon, and I've really enjoyed the staff here that I've worked with so far. It's been great.
Well, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to echo Eric's remarks. I would like to publicly thank you for the luncheon, for the staff, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
The security oath, did everyone sign one?
Yes,
Okay.
except Kevin.
Except Kevin. I don't think Kevin needs to.
I don't, but
No,
I'm perfectly
from
happy to sign one.
From what we read,
Yeah.
he's exempt.
Okay.
Although we're still trying to figure out why.
All right. So all of the staff here completed their new security oaths, and we're all fingerprinted because all the previous fingerprinting was unable to be located at the State Board of Elections. We had a position freeze. All positions are frozen in the county. We requested an exemption from the position freeze. We were just informed on Friday that we could begin to advertise for our temporary positions, and I believe Allison is met with personnel today.
Yes. We'll get that add up as soon as we possibly can to hire for the temporary positions.
Okay, so what we're looking at initially, or at least the staff is breathing down my neck about, is the IT, more IT, and the recruiters and recruiting support. All right.
We've only got about 80 people to hire.
80?
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay.
How
Budget,
many hours? 80? How many hours do they?
Varies.
20 to 40.
20.
And then election day, long hours. Okay, budget, Margie?
Okay, I've got several things for FY18. So the first is the spreadsheet that was sent to everyone in advance. I want to apologize. I neglected to change the header on that. That is actually a spreadsheet through December 31st as of January 4th. I did not kill another tree to reprint those, so I just wanted to publicly notify you of that. Currently, it's we've spent 27.35% of our budget allocation halfway through the year. So I think we've been doing a really good job minimizing our costs to date. And of course, we all know that's going to go out the window as soon as Allison gets her ad posted. So if there's any questions on anything, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next piece.
Margie, but in between our meetings, I know there was an issue which you handled as usually perfectly. It came to our attention that we had to cut our budget by a couple of percentage points.
Yeah, I'm working towards that.
Well, thank you, because you did a great job in between our meetings. And
thank you.
Once again.
Thank you. Yeah, that is actually the next thing on my list for today is the FY18 budget reduction. In your packet, in the advance packet, Lisa sent out a chopped up version of the memo that I originally sent to everybody on November 30th. We were informed by the Office of Management and Budget that each department in the county was being asked to prepare a savings plan of 2% of our current fiscal year, and that the deadline for that was December 8th. And so there was just no turnaround time to have a meeting or anything. We did, Margaret and I spoke with our budget analyst after receiving the information, and everybody on our end thought the best thing to do would be to propose reductions to the SBE line items, because we really don't have any extra money anywhere in the budget for us to try to take any additional hit from. As I outlined in that original memo, our final proposal was to recommend taking the $164,274, which is what the 2% would be, take that entire amount from the voting systems line item. And that was based on the fact that in FY17 we were allocated $782,533, but the state only billed us $384,689.
And so everything's been paid to the state.
For FY17, yeah. That is correct. And so in looking at that and in trying to make the best judgment for a legitimate reduction, rather than just throwing a number out there and knowing we weren't going to be able to deal with it, Margaret and I felt that taking that money from the voting system line item was the best thing to do. I did speak with both Naheed and Marianne as the budget subcommittee and got their approval to move forward, and then of course I forwarded the full board the entire email basically indicating that I would be moving forward with that plan because I had to submit it to the Office of Management and Budget, but that we would place it on the agenda for full approval this month. Before we actually do that, there was a lot of stuff that went on at the end of December, and ultimately, instead of the $164,000, the county executive transmitted to the county council a reduction recommendation for us of only $80,000. And so the county council met on Thursday. I was not aware of the meeting until about a half an hour before the meeting took place. I was able to watch it on their live website to monitor it. There was very little discussion of the Board of Elections. There was a clarification that this cut did not represent a reduction in the amount of equipment. It simply was a reduction in the amount of funding available to pay the state. Once Councilmember Navarro understood that clarification, she indicated that she had no objection to accepting that recommendation from the county executive, and no one else on the GO committee objected. So at this point, the recommendation is going forward to the full council, and it's to reduce our FY18 budget by $80,000 only, and staff would, with board's permission, remove that money from the line item for voting equipment. That's 61932 on the spreadsheet. So At this point, Kevin, I don't know whether I need an actual formal motion or just consent to move forward. Consensus. So if I could, I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has relating to this, but then I would look for consensus to move forward as needed.
Plus the line again.
61932.
Yes.
As I'm looking at it, it's titled Other Rentals,
Yes.
Leases, Voting System. But you're saying in answer to the query from the council member that it doesn't mean a reduction in any equipment.
That is correct. We still have the same amount of equipment. We're still going to deploy the same amount of equipment. It's based on the billing, the recent billing last couple of fiscal years from the state. They have not billed us for the full amount that they told us to allocate. And it is for that reason that we believe taking $80,000 from that line item will not cause any problem. We are not reducing the amount of equipment being utilized in any way, shape, or form.
And that is the equipment that the board decided that we needed 2 scanners at every polling place, or at the majority of the polling places, as well as the requirement now that we have 2 850s in the basement, the high-speed scanners.
Okay.
That will never, we will not go with just one.
Alex?
Margie, do we know why the state hasn't billed us the full amount in the past? I mean, could that change, and maybe they do bill us more? Or
It absolutely could change. I've been here for 16 years now, and half of the time I would say that they don't bill us the full amount that we have allocated, and the other half of the time they bill us more than what we have allocated. And the county Office of Management and Budget is aware of that, and that's why some years we have a deficit at the end of the fiscal year, some years we have a surplus, and that surplus just kind of, we do what we can to save money when we can so that we can deal with the deficit.
I'm kind of ignorant. What does the state bill us for?
Everything.
And Montgomery County is responsible for 50% of the costs of the voting system. And so the cost of the lease payments for the voting system, the costs associated with licensing and maintenance of the electronic poll books, licensing and maintenance of MD voters, the state voter registration system, ballots that they print and send to us, envelopes to accompany those ballots, I voted stickers, thank you. Project management. The state board has several employees that handle project management, and we are billed for a portion of their time. So all of those things are billed to us by the State Board of Elections.
And Alan, just so it's clear, you'll see for a lot of it, it's not just Montgomery County, it's a 50-50 split between the county, each jurisdiction, and the state. And that's how it is for a lot of the voting equipment.
And we're billed based on our voting population. So right now I think we're at, 17%, something like that. But anyway.
Registered voters or people who vote?
Registered voters.
What would happen if, has any county not paid the state?
Not to my knowledge.
But what happened?
They'd take it out of other state aid. They would reduce state aid someplace else.
That'll make us real popular with most of the county government.
Yeah.
It just crossed my mind. I just wondered.
I guess they're all in jail now.
Margie, you did an excellent job.
Thank
on
you.
this.
Thank you. I don't think any problem with the.
Thank you. So board consensus that if I'm told to, I can hit the button on that? Okay, thank you. And then the last piece for FY18 is the second quarter analysis. The Office of Management and Budget has completed its second quarter analysis of our FY18 funding allocation. They're currently projecting a deficit of $52,550 for the year. That represents a projected deficit on the operating side of $79,716, offset by a projected surplus on the personnel side of $27,166. Operating deficit takes into account additional costs for equipment delivery, election judges for the 2 new precincts. Recall we split out and we now have a Twin Brook Rec Center and Burt Mills Elementary School as new precincts. and supplies required as we begin processing the UOCAVA ballots once again. Personnel deficit is largely due to the lapse in the program specialist in operations position. As you know, we just met Mr. Olson, and he did not start until December, so there was a salary lapse from July to that. So we will continue monitoring this. OMB will monitor it. They will perform another analysis, as you all know, at the end of the third quarter, and we'll have a better projection at that point. But that's what they're indicating to us at this time.
Your memo, Margie, here says that the deficit was going to be $320,000.
Yeah. So there were some changes, and primarily that had to do. And Margaret, I'm going to ask for your help on this. With the Runbeck versus ES&S, we had projected a larger deficit because we thought we were going to have to do everything, and now we're not.
Yeah, originally, under the current plan, previously we thought that all of the absentee processes were going to return to the local boards of election. Instead, because no one bid on the contract, now ES&S is taken the place of Runbeck, and they will be printing and sending out all the absentee ballots. So in the past, yeah,
across the state,
what Runbeck used to do, ES&S's print shop is going to take over doing. So the hope is that the same efficiencies by our not having to hire a bunch of staff will reduce the potential overload.
Does that mean that Runbeck is no longer part of the process at all?
Well, we need to discuss that a little further along.
Okay.
Because
Runbeck is not part of the absentee process. That's correct. ES&S the printing of the printer side of their business is taking over.
And who was it that messed?
As of now, you are correct. Runbeck is not a part of our process.
Okay, this is a big moment. This is the first time in a long time that Runbeck is not part of our process.
Wasn't it Runbeck that was part of it when we had the problem with the mailing to the wrong places?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
That's why.
So they're having nothing to do with any of that now.
Well,
we're going to. Okay.
We're not cracking open the champagne cork.
No, not yet.
I don't think not yet.
Do we know what the experience of ES&S in this process is?
Oh, that was their original, when they started many moons ago, when they were called American Information Systems, that's what they were. They printed ballots.
Oh.
That was their original business.
And mailed them and...
Well, you're talking back in the 60s. And quite honestly, I think I was only 7 or 8.
I was there. We had mail.
7 or 8 at the time, so I'm not really sure. But the laws were so different then. But that was their initial business, is they printed ballots, and they printed ballots across the nation. I know that they printed ballots in Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, Connecticut.
They printed and mailed.
And mailed. Okay, so they've been in the business for a long time.
But Margaret, because of this development, though, you think then that 211 number is off the table now. So the projected deficit is everything on Margie's list minus the 211. So it's only
essentially. There were some little tweaks, but yeah.
We're hoping so. We're hoping that with as many years of experience as ES&S has had, we're not going to have to redo a lot of their work.
So how did they get, if they didn't bid on the contract, though? Or did they ultimately bid on it?
ES&S, yeah. I believe this particular RFP went out 3 times.
What was the one that you said nobody bid on?
This was it. The absentee process.
So they put it out again. They reworded it, I believe, and put it out for bid a second time.
And third time.
That's when the ES&S bid.
And forgive me, but what exactly will they be doing? They will be printing the ballots. They will be mailing them. Where do they get returned? Here. So they have nothing to do with the return.
We have not had an opportunity to sit down with, a lot of these, as I get to the state board portion of this, I will cover some of these things. We have not had the sit-down meeting with regards to how ES&S is going to handle the absentee processing. We do know that the back-end process that we're involved in, when we receive the absentee application, we will enter it into the MD voter system and it will be transferred over to the state board. And that data that we've entered for that day will be then transferred to ES&S. But the deadly details, we haven't had that chance to talk to ES&S. They have not given us a briefing with regards to what that product and how that product's going to work, and or where they're mailing that from. If they're mailing it, and I don't know which.
Washington State, they also had a division in Florida. It kind of got them all over.
Yeah, so we don't know where they're mailing it from.
May I ask you, may I repeat back something you just said and tell me if I have it correctly? You'll get here the request for an absentee ballot, and you give it to the state, and then the state gives it to ES&S.
We enter the data into the MD voters database. That information is uploaded nightly. It's nightly?
Yeah.
Nightly to the state board staff in a specific type of file. And then the state pulls that file, they review it for whatever they're reviewing it for, and they transmit it to ES&S.
And one hopes along the way it all stays correct. Okay. Thank you.
I would just encourage that we stay very much on top of this and get the fine points from the state and ES&S in terms of this operation, because certainly we've seen aspects of ES&S that have been more than a little disappointing. So, you know, and we have a history with Runback of the problems that we've encountered in this process. So I think it's important that, you know, dealing with what we knew were problems in the past and how ES&S is going to handle the process, that we have as much assurance as possible that this is going to run correctly.
Believe me, Jessica and her absentee team are pretty much chomping at the bit to meet with ES&S. I mean, we are the big, you heard me say this at the state board meeting, 20+% of all the absentees in the state of Maryland come from this county. So we, I mean, one time, I think the final bid, the state actually only expected that whoever bid on the way they wrote the bid was that that the vendor could only serve one county to all 22 counties and the city. And I think the SBE staff expected the successful vendor to only serve Montgomery County because we were the only ones that have the volume. But it ended up the successful vendor decided to serve the whole state.
And Jim, maybe along the way, and not in a fairly short time frame, if we feel it's appropriate, we ask ES to send somebody here to explain to us exactly how they're going to do everything, so we have it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, we can invite them.
Excuse the expression.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Okay. Going on to voter registration, Jessica White.
So at the end of January, we had 644,378 active registered voters.
378?
644,378.
Active.
And then we had
As of what date? I'm sorry.
That was as of December 31st.
Okay.
And we had 79,965 inactive voters. For a grand total of 724,343. Since that point, well, right at that same point in time, we received a updated report from the state, which is the ERIC, which is one of the list maintenance activities that we undertake. So we have been working on about 25,000 records that we're finishing up this week. So we'll have an update in the month.
There's records, people you're taking off?
No, not taking off. People who have address changes, out-of-state moves, some of those will get notification, and if they respond back that they did in fact move out of state, then they will be canceled if they request to be so. Otherwise, they may become inactive, or if it's a move within the state of Maryland, we just move them between counties.
Okay, then there was a news article on December 2nd. Jim contacted me with regards to this article that appeared in the Post. I believe Lisa included it in your packet. It talked about the Maryland Department of Motor Vehicles had issued to 600 non-citizens a driver's license in which they could potentially register to vote. Jim asked me to find out from the state if any of those individuals had registered to vote and what was the state doing about it. It's this article that's in your packet. I have sent emails and spoke with Mary Wagner several times, and have no reply has been given to me at this time. I do not know if that means they're just further researching it or what the status of that is, but I will continue to ask Mary Wagner to provide the board with answers as it relates to these 600 individuals.
Okay. Mary Wagner's not been at the past couple of state board meetings, but she's still in that role.
Very. Yeah, she is.
Does the article specifically reference how it could affect voting, or are we just being careful?
I'm just the question was asked of me to find out if any of those individuals registered to vote, and that's what I am pursuing.
Okay, so it's not that anyone has suggested that they have, it's just that we're checking to see to make sure that they have.
Correct.
And where are we in that check?
I wished I could tell you.
Mary Wagner
hasn't gotten back to me.
And there's no way we can check from our end?
We don't know who they are.
I see. We don't have the list.
No.
And this article was dated December 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Would
is
it
there
help
someone else
you?
in state government who can
Would it
help us get them?
help you if we asked the state board for a list of the people? If we sent a letter to them?
This topic was discussed at the state board meeting, and
say,
they haven't gotten an answer either. All I saw was in the report from the state that there were X amount of individuals, 7 individuals that have been referred that were non-citizens that registered to vote, but it wasn't tied to this article.
My question, I don't know, is would Ms. Wagner or Mrs. Lamone or Mrs. Carlson react more favorably, or not favorably, but quickly, if a letter came from us, or do you think that you're putting enough pressure on them to get this as soon as possible?
Well, if respectfully, their own board members are asking them, the state staff, to get an answer to this question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean,
the state board's asked the same question.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we ought to send a letter to the state board. Jack them a little bit.
No, they've asked the same question.
I get that. My point is a little pressure.
We heard that, but then when no answer comes, it sort of dies off.
Okay.
All right. Going on to the State Board of Elections. Notification was given to the local boards of elections that all polling place changes should be submitted by January 26th. Notification by the Maryland Democratic Central Committee regarding the candidates for County Central Committee shall be gender balanced. That letter was included in your packet that was sent in advance. A notification that ES&S was awarded the contract to mail the absentee ballots. This is a new vendor for printing. The directors have been advised that ES&S will be presenting to the local boards of elections in the next 30 days their product and their plans. The transportation contract was awarded to Interstate Moving to deliver and pick up the voting equipment. This company is headquartered in Springfield, Virginia. The meeting is scheduled in the next 45 days. I have been verbally told that some of the individuals from Office Movers have been picked up by this company, and that one of the main liaisons that we worked with in delivering our equipment is going to be one of the leads with this contract and working with Montgomery County So my staff is kind of breathing a sigh of relief that we're not really dealing with total newbies. A letter went out to any candidate that filed for office during the calendar year 2017 that they must file an updated financial disclosure after January 1st. Candidates who filed in the calendar year 2017 filed the 2016 financial disclosure. For our candidates to appear in the 2018 election, they must file a financial disclosure for the calendar year 2017, and that must be completed and filed with, depending on who they need to file with, the state or the county, by March 1st. Letters were sent to all the candidates after January 1st. The State Board of Elections Administrator will brief the Maryland House Ways and Means Committee on Friday, January 26th. Pre-primary testing took place last week, January 16th through the 19th. Overall, we were pleased. There's still some glitches with same-day voter registration. We recorded them and submitted our comments. Runbeck demonstrated their software of an automated system to copy the online delivery ballot to ballot card stock. And I want to kind of go into this a little bit further. Allison, Jessica, and I attended the demonstration at the Anne Arundel Board of Elections to listen, view, and experience hands-on with this software product. The product includes software, laptop scanner, and a specific type of printer. The initial cost is $46,500 with a licensing fee of $14,000 each year out. Allison and I and Jessica Allison and I heard about this software and duplication ability during the fall 2016 election. The state board arranged for a conference call with the vendor literally days before the election and suggested that Montgomery County could pilot the election. I basically said no because we had no time, no training. We would be scrambling to look for the equipment, but more importantly, if we don't have the training, it's just a scenario for disaster. It is important to note that Maricopa County, which is Phoenix, Arizona, was using the product at the time. Arizona does allow for return voted absentee ballots, which they call early voting, to be processed and the envelopes opened for tallying as they're returned. Arizona has a permanent early voting list, and the media reports that nearly 80% of the ballots voted in 2016 were early voting. Once you sign up, you get your ballot that way all the time. The election administrator in Maricopa County worked 45 teams, 3 shifts, round the clock, for their 2 million plus registered voters, and right over 1 million of these ballots were the mail-in type, in which duplication may or may not needed to occur. The product that was demonstrated on December of this year, 2017, requires at least 2 persons to work as a team with another individual managing a printer. The imaging is very confusing. Voters print out their ballot, as most of you will recall, on an 8.5 by 11 sheet, whereas our ballot card stock is 8.5 by 17. Our assessment, and that's Jessica, myself, and Allison, is that it would not be efficient for the large number of ballots that we are expected to process using our web delivery ballots. Using it requires comparing the original ballot, which is the 8.5 by 11, to a duplicated ballot visually on the screen. And the imaging is confusing for the web delivery ballots. And it's because everyone has 8.5 by 11 paper at home. They don't have 8.5 by 17. And the contests do not line up in the same place or even on the same page. You can't compare both ballots on the screen simultaneously very easily. Additionally, there's a limitation on how many persons can work off of each license. I'm not saying never, just not this 2018 election cycle. The product is a solid beginning. It's designed for a structure of laws that are significantly different than Maryland laws. No one that staff is aware of duplicates one size ballot to a different size piece of paper. Montgomery County does not need a slower process. Another issue is staff. This would require a team of skilled staff. Unfortunately, our skilled staff is processing these absentee ballots. They're also processing thousands of provisional ballots. We're reconciling the vote totals to the voter authority cards. We're doing auditing. We're processing the overseas absentee and getting prepared for the certification, which by law is only supposed to last 10 to 14 days. In fact, it takes us about 21 days or greater to certify the election. Online absentee ballots in June of this year, we can probably expect to duplicate anywhere from 1,900 to 2,800, depending on the turnout. The Board of Canvassers in 2016, as you probably painfully recall, we duplicated 19,100 plus. Even the gubernatorial general election are not as high as the presidential election. I anticipate that at the very most we would probably do 13,000 absentee ballots, which is half of what we had 54,000 ballots in 2016.
Sorry, the 13,000 is for
duplication?
Duplication?
No, yeah. No, it's not duplication. 13,000 is probably the most
Total.
we would have.
The most absentee ballots for which election?
The gubernatorial.
For the general or
for the general.
Okay, thanks.
Staff recommends to delay any purchase of the software and licensing until the product is user-friendly and more robust. It's not cost-effective or efficient at this time. The product was used in Phoenix, Arizona, when the returned absentee ballots are processed immediately, when returned to the election administrator office using a completely different set of statutory structure for validating and tallying election results. Staff instead recommends that Maryland join the other 49 states and begin processing absentee ballots prior to Election Day. Staff did speak to Mary Ann and Jackie in advance of the State Board meeting last Thursday. Staff sees the solution in 2 steps. Change the law related to processing absentee ballots, then allow the marketplace to improve the software and hopefully come down in price. Allow more use of off-the-counter counter products and allow the ballots to be comparable. Mary Ann and Jackie may wish to brief the board members regarding these issues. The board attorney has been provided a draft of proposed legislation that would permit absentee ballots to be processed quicker and permitting election results from absentee to be posted at partial absentee election night, like the other 49 states. This is a project that Allison McLaughlin has been chairing with the Mayo Committee, and she believes that the time is ripe for this to occur. Staff believes that this board, the Montgomery County Board of Elections, could be instrumental in advocating this legislative change. The board's leadership and the fact that we are the most significant users of the absentee ballot process and the county's significant presence in the legislature and the results of the tabulation of election results only emphasizes the leadership role that this county board of elections could make in this particular decision. While we have 17% of all the voters, 28% of all of Maryland's absentee voters were from this county. Leadership could improve this process. Votes cast could be released much earlier, and the focus of the time, of your time as Board of Canvassers, would be with those issues of importance, such as determining voter intent, making sure that the ballot, if it's with some sort of odd marks, is that intentional? When we have ballots that are, we have four ballots in one envelope when it should only be 2. You would be able to use your time effectively only looking at those issues that are significant. Allison, did you want to add anything to this?
The only thing that I'll just add to the discussion is that I think part of what has also prompted some urgency to basically sort of calling the question on where we are on this is that you did have the state board votes on the sort of related issue of what do we do when you have both an absentee and a provisional ballot from someone. And they had voted initially to pursue a regulation to say, let's count the provisional. And then ultimately the Attorney General's office said, you don't have the regulatory authority for that. And they pulled that back. But it is still the posture of the state board staff, because they had that vote of the state board, that the provisional ballot is preferred to the absentee ballot in those situations, which is at cross purposes to the notion of opening absentee ballots before Election Day, because how could you ever open a ballot before Election Day if you're still waiting to see if they're going to cast a provisional ballot at the polls on Election Day? So this question is sort of back in the discussion. We gather, Nikki Charlson said at a recent Mayo meeting that they were having some conversations with folks in the legislature about the security of the absentee voting process, and that one of their answers that they were trying to make to members of the legislature was that a way to resolve these issues was to just count the provisional ballot. Don't count the absentee ballot in those cases, then count the provisional ballot. And so that whole narrative, that whole discussion is trending more towards counting the provisional, where we just have this growing volume of more and more and more absentee ballots to deal with after Election Day. So,
and think about it. We have to hold absentee 1 until we process all 9,000 provisional ballots. So election results are going to be held even longer under this provisional scenario. I just want to add one more thing. There's a SBE directive with regards to we're supposed to process, if we discover a non-citizen who's registered to vote, we're supposed to send that directly to the state. But I'm going to turn this over to Kevin, because we did provide a draft of the legislation. And then Marianne and Jackie may want to weigh in, because they were part
Actually,
of that.
can I weigh in advance to Kevin? And maybe Jackie will as well. There might be some question on the part of other board members, what's all this reference to Marianne and Jackie. We both attended the board meeting in December when it first came to light that there was going to be this presentation of this machine, and that they were going to...
State board meeting.
Pardon me?
State board meeting.
The state board.
The state board meeting in December.
I'm sorry, what did I say?
Just said board.
Oh, okay, yes, the state board meeting in December. That there was going to be a demonstration of the process and discussion of it. And so Jackie and I immediately thought, ooh, well, we'd like to see that and be able, to report to our board about it. However, upon inquiry, we were told we were not invited as board members, because it was for staff of the various county boards, specifically the election directors and deputies, which was fine with us. And then we reached out to Margaret and said, hey, after you have this demonstration, etc. Of course, it was coming down right around the time of the holiday. Could we meet with you and hear what it's all about and what you think? And so that's why we came back and met prior to the January state board meeting, which was last week, with Margaret and Allison, and really had a very good in-depth conversation on the whole process, as Margaret has outlined in depth here, as to what was really wrong with it, why it wasn't going to work for us, why it wasn't cost effective, and basically just wasn't going to do what our whole process needs doing. But then it went a step further in terms of saying, well, this is a nightmare. It's only going to grow, the number of absentee ballots and the amount of duplication that has to go on. And what can we do short of having, some type of software to deal with this? And that's when the idea started to be kicked around about if we could just open these ballots earlier in the process instead of waiting till 2 days after the election to start any of it, and obviously realizing that there would be a need for legislation. It was then something that Allison was going to run with and work with Kevin with, and that's what brings us to Kevin's report now.
Echo everything Mary Ann said. We realize that the machine, which is desperately needed, the machines for this just aren't adequate, and I would like to add along the way, maybe we need to work with Rombach or whoever's going to do it to get them adequate for Montgomery County, not just Phoenix. But anyway, we need to open them up earlier. It would save a huge amount of time. The Mayo's already talking about it. And as you all know, Allison is vice president of Mayo, which is something I just have to add in there because we're very proud of her. And talk about what you all had talked about at Mayo and what we want it to be. Do you have anything to add to what we're saying?
Well, the Mayo discussions have been just that. They've been discussions. And ultimately, it's going to have to come down to someone choosing to take the lead and to say, this is something we really want to pursue, which is certainly not something that I feel that I'm in a position to do in the absence of direction from this board, that's actually something that you want.
We really do need to have this opening up these ballots earlier. And 49 states do it. And guess what state doesn't? Here we sit. So that, and evidently there've been no reported problems with it in security or anything else. You would open them up, you would check the outside signature, open them up, put them in batches, and seal them, right? Isn't that what the process would be? Say 5 days before the election, you could start that, or whatever. But we do need legislation, and we can do emergency legislation at this point.
Yeah, you need two things. I guess let me start with sort of this historical backdrop, which is the date of starting the absentee canvass, the Thursday after the election, has been in place for forever. And when you think about what has transpired between then and now, we've gone from a system of you used to have to have an excuse to get an absentee ballot. We have no excuse absentee voting now. We have this online delivery system. So we have a proliferation of absentee voting that just represents a large population of our voters. And it has become incredibly time consuming because it's something that is used and is available to voters. So I agree wholeheartedly. It needs to start earlier. I think, I'll just be very candid, I think it's ridiculous, quite frankly, that a group of professionals sits around a room as board members and you don't look at 99% of these ballots, because 99% of them are perfectly fine. They're timely, the person's filled them out correctly, the canvass teams open them up, and they process them. And so when you look at the percentage of ballots that actually require board review, those are very much limited to those that would be those that there's any question in terms of voter intent, or there's an issue under the statute that they may be rejected for some other reason. So it seems to me the more practical, the more effective approach is to allow the staff to begin processing these earlier, and that for the board to come in and do what the board should be doing, which is voting on those ballots that are going to be possibly rejected, because that's really the Board of Canvassers' role when it comes to this. I mean, you all are here, you all help process the ballots because you have to be here. But of all, the big obstacle is to get rid of this concept that you need a quorum of the Board of Elections to open and begin processing the ballots, because it takes just so long to do, and the vast majority of them there's simply no issue with at all. And so, yeah, I think maybe Margaret sent me a draft. It needs some work. There's going to need to be changed to 11302, which is the canvass of absentee ballots. There's going to be a need to change some of the COMAR regulations with regard to the timing of things. But certainly the board staff could be directed to begin opening and processing absentee ballots, 18 days ahead of time to keep up with the flow of them, with the Board of Elections, the Board of Canvassers formally convening maybe the Thursday after the election to go over each ballot where there is some question as to whether it should be accepted or rejected. And that would be much more effective and much more, and it would be better for our voters and for our elected officials, because on the night of the election, just like with early voting results, at 8 o'clock, as soon as the polls close, you have 90-some-odd% of your absentee votes are already counted. They've been tabulated. They're already part of your vote totals. And so you've got all that resolved. So to me, it makes a lot of sense that this idea of starting 2 days after the election is over doesn't make any sense to me. We are not only the minority, we're the sole minority. We're it. Everyone else seems to have gotten to embrace the idea of doing this and doing it earlier. And for whatever reason, Maryland has not. And I think if there's any county that's going to should take the lead on this and reach out to the Montgomery County delegation and to the county council, the county executive's office, and is Montgomery County, because we have so much time that's invested. I don't have the numbers, but the cost for just sitting there duplicating these ballots and to sit there and have a quorum of board members present to go ahead and so the breakdown of cost that Margaret's handing to me, somewhere around the cost was like $55,000, and it's just squandering money.
But that's not just because of board members being present. That's for all the staff.
That's for having to bring in all the staff and have 3 rooms going at one time. And it just seems to me that if you started earlier, it could be more, could be done more efficiently. It could be done with greater accuracy. It wouldn't be this mad rush to go ahead and get through 19,000 ballots to be duplicated. It could be just done in. And if there's any question at all as to whether a ballot should be accepted or rejected, that's where the Board of Canvassers comes in and makes a decision.
So this won't change anything in terms of what needs to be duplicated, or could it?
No, this would not change the duplication part of it. So the web delivery part of it is another question, which is what the board's position is on the level of access for web delivery. And that's the board to make a decision as to whether that should be. The board thinks that everyone should have access to that, or whether military and overseas individuals should be able to avail themselves of that. And not to sound flip, but and the disabled community, but. If you're living here in Montgomery County and we have 11 early voting sites and you've got a polling place and you've got no excuse absentee voting, that maybe that's not something that should be available.
Well, the way I've heard that described, Kevin, is that Maryland, and it would be the state, got ahead of itself in moving to make that available to all voters that wanted to vote absentee. They took the additional step of going beyond the military and overseas, and and kind of led the way.
You mean the state board?
But yes, but the state board, that was a decision of the state board that
without the
opened
proper
that
background
up.
as far as machines to process this and ways to
Exactly.
process it.
Exactly.
Eventually, maybe that's going to be. I'm sure eventually
They were ahead of the technology, and just went full speed ahead, and then we're left with the issues that we heard today, and the problems that have resulted.
Allison, any of the other big counties on board with this?
But they're
What?
like two
Any
different
of the other
issues.
big
There are
counties?
two different
They're two
issues.
different issues.
They would, my understanding, Margaret, now you were there with the other counties, my understanding is they would very much, let's just take opening them early, opening the bets, they would all be very happy to have this. And they expect, many are very happy to have Montgomery County take the lead because it is, I'm sorry, going through my mind, I want to say the best, but I would never say that on tape. Because we have so many. And so
So much at stake.
So much at stake, thank you.
So-
Now, is it possible to get, we do need legislation this year.
Absolutely.
And is it possible to put in an emergency bill at this point and get this passed if it's very simply worded? I understand we have,
You gotta start somewhere.
yeah, exactly.
Kevin,
And
do you have
we-
legislation
we
proposed?
would be
Do you
getting
have
better
a-
going through Mayo.
What's that?
Did you have a bill proposed? Do you have a bill?
I don't have a draft ready. I mean, I started looking at it this morning, and it's it's not a simple thing because there are a number of sections that are going to need to be changed. Because quite frankly, the language that's used throughout the election law article is the local board. Now, and it never really clearly delineates a lot of times what is the local board, what the local board is supposed to be doing, and what is more of what I'll call a ministerial activity that the local board staff should be doing. But for the canvassing stuff, it's pretty clear that it's the board of canvassers itself. So there be some changes that would need to be made, both to COMAR and to the statute. But it's worth a shot, right? I mean,
Well, just on opening the ballots, you think that's legislative?
No question.
Oh, yeah.
Because Jim, as it reads right now, it says you shall not open a ballot until the Wednesday after the election.
Okay.
The Wednesday or the Thursday?
And we basically want to change that, you shall not open it until.
Staff opens them Wednesday, we meet on Thursday.
Code says Wednesday, reg says Thursday, I think.
That's right.
It doesn't make sense. One says Wednesday, one says you can't do anything until Thursday. They're not consistent.
And we have asked the state in the past, because we have so many, to allow us to open the ballots on Wednesday, and we've gotten shut down. And Ross and Nikki, both who I've talked to in the past, basically say you can't touch a ballot and open it until 10 a.m. on Thursday after the election.
Is that something where the state board could do it without legislation, at least to get us Wednesday?
Giving us Wednesday isn't giving us enough time.
Oh, I understand that we'd rather get something better. I'm just saying that getting legislation passed relating to the 2018 election in 2018 is a very tall order. Whereas I don't know whether getting a regulation change in that time, that's probably also a tall order, but might not be quite as tall.
I think the regulation's void because 11302B says a local board may not open any envelope of an absentee ballot prior to 8 a.m. on the Wednesday following the election. So I would say that the COMAR regulation is actually inaccurate and the statute's correct.
So the board could decide to do that and take our chances on somebody suing.
But
Seems pretty clear.
But that's not much help.
But the Wednesday is not.
No.
I understand it's not much help. But,
But nothing ventured.
So Kevin, you get game plan. You plan on sending us a draft of legislation?
Send you a draft bill. And then the second issue is what, if anything, the board wants to do with the online delivery ballot system. If you want to do anything.
Taking a lot to chew in such a short period of time.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that I think in particular with the online ballot delivery that we might want to hear from the parties and the public, because that is actually something that a large segment of the public cares about, particularly those of the younger people who are used to doing everything electronically, and including asking for their ballots. I suspect that while there's obviously a lot of good reasons for us to be concerned about that process, there's a reason why it was adopted And the trend right now, both in Maryland and in many other places, is towards making voting easier, not the other way around.
I agree with that, but I agree that's the way it's going to be. I simply think it's too soon, given our capabilities. I truly believe that eventually that's going to be the way we go with voting. And I agree with you about the younger people. The other piece of it is, they have lots of ability to vote provisionally, absentee, walk-in. And we have to think about our ability to keep it secure and our ability to process them, given how many we have. And that would be my objection to doing that at this time.
I think we should concentrate on opening the ballots early. Don't you think? We don't have much time.
Well, what I would like to recommend, and I think Marianne and Jackie kind of kicked it around, and that is that, if I'm putting words into your mouth, just stop me, but while we may actually find someone to enter, and I think Allison knows a delegate that might be interested in this piece of legislation, it's something that's going to take us 2 or more years. If we can introduce this concept to the legislature, and even if there is some turnover amongst the delegation in the 2018 election, to have the opportunity to educate the potential committee members in the House and in the Senate, and to start letting them know what the facts are, that this, Montgomery County always kind of swats itself as they're the first to do something. And I think we could probably say being number 50 out of the other 49. So I think it's an education process, and it also is important that the elected officials feel comfortable with the fact that there are, quote, live ballots that have been opened that are going to be sitting in a secure warehouse about to be scanned and tallied. And I think education, I think they need to understand what other states are doing, what other states are doing successfully. It's just an important piece of the education process for the members of the legislature. I don't know, I think you guys talked about it taking longer, but...
So what would you propose as a game plan now? Sending forward...
I think that the best thing is for Kevin to work on the piece of legislation that Allison and I drafted, and because Kevin found one of the things that is the question of the Board of Canvassers' role when the ballots are received. So in other jurisdictions, so the ballots are received, we process them in, we scan them, we beep them and all that stuff. We tear off the secrecy sleeve and confirm that there is in fact a signature. Do we really want the board to sit there 18 days out, 17 days out? At the same time, we're expecting you to stop at early voting sites and things like that. Or is this something that the thing that I think I was saying too, I've talked about this so many times, I'm not sure who I said this to. The only thing that would be presented or initially opened would be what we call the perfect absentee ballot. And that is timely. So it's obviously going to be timely because we're opening it before Election Day. And it has a signature on it, and it's the signature of the voter. So that would be the ballots that we would suggest. And that anything that there's a question about, then we believe that the Board of Canvassers should receive all of those ballots so that they can individually review them. But the first question is, does the board, as a policy, because you would be setting, this legislation would be setting a policy, does the board need to be there every 8 of those early 18 days? And I would say no.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I feel strongly that we should try this year and get it started. And if we don't get it through this year, we can certainly...
I mean, what's the downside to trying?
That's right, exactly. And with all the emphasis and all the things we're hearing about the whole election process, This is a time when it's on people's minds, and I think we're more likely to get something, and Alex is right, what's the downside to getting it written and submitting it to the committee? And we've got two people that I'm told might be very good, interested, Greg Zucker and Addie Eckert, whom I've known forever, and we might get something done. And
Well, that's the other piece of it. I think we're very fortunate here in Montgomery County in many respects, but we have members in the legislature, both House of Delegates and the Senate, who are very interested in election issues and that I think would, be interested in this legislation.
Especially if they get a cover letter saying we're the only state in the whole nation not doing it. That.
Okay, can you draft something for
Yes,
us?
I will.
Great, thank you.
Thank you all.
And then, but on the issue of restricting the web delivery ballot, that you'd still need to determine whether we need a legislation change, or is that's something the board could do, the state board could do?
I believe the state board can do it. I'll have to take another look, but I believe the state board can do that.
No?
I think the state board, I'll have to take another look at it.
Do you want to take a vote laying out a position now, or do you just want to wait and see what gets drafted and developed and then sort of defer the question of
Well, Kevin's
laying out
going
the position
to
of
get
the
us a
board?
draft proposal.
Jim, would you mind asking Lynn Garland what the state board's, she's an expert on it, what the state board's position was on
She's here.
Who are you?
Lynn.
Oh, Lynn. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you said Linda.
No. Maybe she can enlighten us whether or not she knows about this, whether the state board can do it.
Lynn?
Well, the original legislation said that there would be online delivery and an online marking tool, but only if the state board certified it. And the state board eventually in 2016 did go ahead and certify it, and then said that's because they thought it was the desire of the General Assembly to have that, so it would require a change in the General Assembly. And I should say, even before they certified it, the way the State Board Administration always interpreted the law was that online ballot of delivery was required by the General Assembly, even if the on-screen marking wasn't. So, based on how they've interpreted in the past, it would require a legislative change to restrict the online delivery to only military and overseas voters and voters with disabilities. I should say that the whole issue of requesting your ballot online does not need to be restricted at all. Everyone could still request their absentee ballot online, still to make it convenient for people. The only difference would be that you need legislation to restrict who actually received their ballot online instead of the mail. So if you suggested legislation, you don't need to restrict who can request their ballot online.
But Lynn, am I not remembering this correctly? Wasn't there the first election cycle that it was available to everyone, and then the next election cycle there was pending litigation and the state limited it to military and overseas?
I believe you're right. I don't believe there was pending legislation. I think that it was open to everyone for right before the election. People didn't know about it. It wasn't used very much. I think that probably was 2012. And then 2014, it was limited to military and overseas. And then there was litigation about whether it could be, whether people with disabilities can get that too.
Right.
And so it was decided people with disabilities should be able to get that too. And then it wasn't until 2016 that it was opened up to all, it was certified for all voters, if I remember correctly.
Okay, thank you. I'll have to take another look at it. There was a time period where it was limited, and I'm not sure whether that was...
It was prior to certification.
Prior to certification.
I think that's right.
Margaret, have you told us about the ballot stub? We lost that issue.
We lost that issue.
Does the board know?
What?
The ballot stub, myself and the five out of the 6 largest jurisdictions wanted to get rid of the ballot stubs. We lost. We are going to have ballot stubs on the ballots for 2018. Why we're keeping the ballot stubs on, besides wasting money, is beyond me.
I found that it was a very brief discussion, a little absurd, because they looked at one set of numbers but not the others, where there were a majority of the counties were for doing it in this election. When you looked at that, but then there was another statistic that showed what was it? Who wanted it at all or whatever.
There were 2 counties that wanted it.
To keep the ballot stubs?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, it was another
It
disappointing
was
about.
done very poorly, I thought.
Yeah, because at the December board
Okay,
meeting,
really?
they said they didn't hear from enough counties. They wanted to hear from all the counties. So then they did, and it was tabulated, and it's look, oh, we won. No, we didn't.
Yeah, we won, but we didn't.
Charlie Brown and the football.
There you go.
Okay, that's with regards to. That's all of my issues with regards to.
State board?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, then legislative update. There were bills that were sent. Probably the big ones are introduced was the automatic voter registration.
Rank voting? Is that introduced?
I'm sorry.
The rank voting, is that introduced?
Ranked choice voting was sent. I believe Allison sent you a copy of that legislation, and there was another significant piece of legislation. Random ordering of the names on the ballot, and that was the third one.
Was the bill reintroduced about our salaries, or was that killed?
No, that was not introduced.
Okay.
Should we draft something?
No, because that was the bill that basically the alternate members would get like $50 a meeting.
Right.
But that's not on the
No,
legislation.
Not
Okay.
at this time.
It doesn't go through.
Okay, good. I'm glad they went through that.
It would be helpful to know if the board has a position that they want to take on the random ordering of candidates on the ballot. I missed the last Mayo Legislative Committee meeting, and there was the only bill that they actually voted to oppose, except there's one local bill too, is this one, is the random ordering of candidates on the ballot because of the expense.
Let me ask you, is that something for us? That seems more of a political decision. We administer the election law. Should we get involved in politics?
How hard would it be to administer? It sounds like someone thinks that it would be.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think I'm speculating here. I don't have solid answers, but my speculation is that because the way that we do so much of our election procedures is centralized at the state level, we have a single database that all of the ballots are basically designed in, and candidates have a single slot, a certain ballot position on the ballot. Whereas if the order is different in each county, then you have to have a database set up for each county.
The legislation provides that each county does their own drawing?
Each county does its own lottery.
So the gubernatorial race could be in different order.
I don't know if this
Everybody.
legislation
that's
actually
crazy.
changes the partisan slot. I don't believe that.
No, it doesn't sound like it does.
That I believe that this year the Republicans are at the top and the Democrats are the second slot, and then but for within each political party, let's say you had 7 individuals running for county council, then you would do a random drawing on that and put them in whatever order. So Joe Smith got drawn first, so he would be in position 1, and Andy Jones was picked for position number 2, and Andrea Anderson is in position number 3.
Correct. It does not change the way that they're ordered on the general election ballot. For primaries, it's a very short bill. It strikes the part about ordering candidates' names in the order of surnames and replaces it with a provision that says a local board shall conduct a random drawing.
I will tell you that I came from a jurisdiction in which we changed the order in every precinct. I think Kansas is the same. It is a very, very expensive process because you have to lay out the ballot and it's, you know.
I mean, this is as an alternative, and not on either side, but as an alternative, it's a less costly proposition than ballot rotation, where it would be, 1,400 ballot styles.
Right.
So what's the expense involved?
The expense involved is that you have to program for every precinct for each political party because each name changes in each precinct.
But it doesn't have to.
It's a software expense.
Why, if they were running for county council, wouldn't the name, in whatever order they're in, be the same in every precinct?
And for personnel too.
If this legislation is interpreted in that manner, yes, you are correct.
Well, but if you're running in the 8th congressional district and Carroll County has its order, Frederick County has its order, and Montgomery County has its order, it could very well be that each one is different, and that that can impose all kinds of costs, not only on us, but also on candidates.
That would be solved easily.
You know, et cetera.
Is this more of a political question than an administrative question?
I think it was introduced, at least in part, as a response to the issues with the ballot marking device and the limitations on having so many candidates on a screen.
Mm-hmm. But that doesn't.
That's the administrative piece of it.
That doesn't resolve the problem for the person who gets the last pick and they're on the third screen. They're still going to be complaining that they're on the third screen.
So I'll just assume.
I mean, this seems like something that should be hammered out by the legislature.
I'll just assume no position on any of these unless there's a vote otherwise.
Okay.
I mean, there's several bills, but you've seen them all.
Okay. If there is something that you want to weigh in upon, please contact Allison, and if we need to, we can maybe have a telephone conference call so that the board can weigh in on a position. All right.
I have one where I don't want to weigh in, but I want to understand, and that's the one about the judges. I gather that currently the judges are on both the Democratic and Republican ballot.
Yes.
And this is to make them like the school board.
Yes.
Correct. And the idea being that you would narrow the field in the primary without regard to political parties,
Correct.
so that it wouldn't just be that a majority of Republicans or a majority of Democrats would make a decision.
Well, now there's 7 judges that are going to be on the ballot, and a lady filed, so there's going to be 8 candidates in each primary for 7 judgeships. And the top 7 in each primary go to the general.
Right.
For how many spots?
7. So it's possible all 8 on the primary ballots could go to the general if the non-judge wins either primary.
Right.
Oh, I see.
But it sounds like if it was under this basis, that person could still end up in the general. Well, I guess the question is, what's the difference? Because, the difference is that they could win with by getting enough votes with a smaller set of voters.
I think. See, now the Republican primary obviously is much smaller, but if you're in the top 7 in the Republican primary, you go to the general. And that person who goes to the general could have gotten swamped in the Democratic primary and not have the 7 top votes.
Right.
Oh, so the way it is now, you only have to win one primary to get through.
To the general.
Get to the general, correct.
But I think the legislation is, it's like...
It also allows non-affiliated voters to vote.
Yeah.
I will say that it's good that they say that if it's a tie, that they both get nominated instead of making us draw lots like in Virginia.
Or duel.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have anything new to report. Judicial watch remains pending before Judge Hollander, and we're just waiting for a decision.
On the motion to dismiss.
on the motions to dismiss.
Okay.
And nothing will happen until the court rules on the motion to dismiss, because the federal local rules don't allow any discovery or any other activity to occur until a ruling has been made on a preliminary motion.
Is it going to be oral argument? We don't know.
I don't know. Generally, Judge Hollander is not known for holding oral argument in a lot of cases. A lot of the judges in Greenbelt now do, but the Baltimore judges generally do not.
So, are they going to add Alan? It's one of your perks.
The only non-defendant among us.
He has to bail us out of jail.
Yeah, Gracie, is she automatically will she be dismissed? Gracie or no?
Yeah, she will, but she's sued in her official capacity anyway,
Okay.
so she's really not non-party at this point.
I'm not sure she was a defendant.
Yeah, we all are.
I don't know that she was either.
No, I think she was.
Oh,
It's
as
gotten
an
out under the wire.
alternate, maybe not.
No, I think
No.
With the alternates on there?
I think
I think it got,
She may have already left the
I
board.
think she had already left.
Oh.
She had left.
I thought I saw her
a
name on
month
the.
before.
You got the lawsuit, Al?
Yeah.
You may want to rethink this whole thing about being on the website.
No,
She's not named?
on there.
She's not.
She had just resigned, I think, shortly before.
Is Jackie on
the
there?
thing had been filed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jackie's on there.
Yes.
Did Mr. Popper ever explain why he thought it was necessary to sue all of us individually, if given that the board could be sued in its own name?
He declined to explain
I see.
his position.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Old business. Margie?
Okay, at the November meeting, the board asked that we contact the town of Chevy Chase regarding suspension of permitted parking adjacent to Janie Lawton Community Recreation Center for early voting. We do have confirmation from them that they have approved the suspension of parking, and that was requested for Elm Street, Willow Lane, and 44th Street, so that the parking will be available to non-community residents during early voting hours of 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. For both the primary and general elections. So that has been approved by the town council.
Thank you.
It was possible to include that in the sample ballot.
Okay.
Thanks.
Wait, did you hear that?
Yeah,
Alice?
we had language in the sample ballot that we may want to revisit.
Yeah, that's a good point, because
Want people to know that they can do it.
That was Willow, 44th.
Elm.
No, thank you.
Especially now that we've got specifics in time to include.
And the fact that it only goes till 6 o'clock, was parking always available after 6? Was that the...
I thought it was.
Is
Well,
that...
I'm very hesitant at this, but didn't it have to do with the fact that the residents needed
We're
to park
coming
there
home.
after work?
So that's a bit
I
troubling,
mean, but they
because
have
that's also...
but you have to be. You have to be able to park when you.
Yeah. Let's check it out.
We'll
Yeah.
double check that.
Yeah.
But these are the same hours that we had
Had
as
before? Okay.
so it's the same exact setup as before.
I didn't realize.
Whatever we have to choose to put out there.
Okay.
New business, polling place 40430. St. Elizabeth's declined after the board had met to sign the lease. They instead are going to have a camp. So we have to find a new location. So Chris,
For 4:30?
for 430, it's off
For
of Montgomery.
4:30. Anyone can see? And I have to back up.
What's happening?
No, that's 13:43.
And why did they,
Camp.
summer camp, okay.
St. Elizabeth's been a
Huh?
St. Elizabeth's been a polling place for
Much to the dismay of Senator
Okay.
Kagan.
She doesn't object to it being a polling place.
This is the second of the two precincts that we needed to discuss today. Or actually, it's the first on the presentation. Precinct 430, the original site declined to host. We had basic plans in place, but the facility gentleman that works with us was overruled by a program coordinator. Sites that we looked at were Charles E. Smith Jewish Day School, which is along Montrose. We spoke with Faith United Methodist Church. Charles Smith is very much interested in hosting. They have an upper and lower school. The lower school, I believe, is through 8, and then they have their high school. They have 2 nice buildings. They're interested in helping us out in 2020, although their schedule was planned for 2018, and they would like to speak to us again for the 2020 schedule. And as I said, there's conflicts in the schedule at Faith United. Farmland Elementary School is an existing precinct polling place. Thought about trying to put 2 precincts in that building, and we found out that the gym has no air conditioning, so that was not an option for us. Bender Jewish...
You can't get temporary air conditioning? No.
Well, we went through that with our construction of gyms
Right.
and
The chiller issue.
and Bender Jewish Community Center we use as a polling place currently, so that really is not an option for us. There would not be able to host 2 precincts in that location. B'nai Israel Congregation declined to host. Green Acres School, I'm going to say that they declined. They keep telling me they're talking about it. They're worried about logistics. They've never come back and accepted to speak with me.
But they do have a summer camp
They
scheduled.
have a summer camp scheduled
Big camp.
in there already. And they don't close their school on election day. Richard Montgomery, we're suggesting a shared location, putting the 2 precincts together. And the precinct 430 hosts 2755 in registered voters. The turnout for the 2016 elections was 35%. The location, as I mentioned earlier, was St. Elizabeth Catholic School. They declined to host. The precinct that we're talking about is adjacent to the home precinct. It's ADA compliant. Electioneering is permitted. There's good parking, and the room is of adequate size. This is the presentation that we usually give our election judges in their materials. This is the area that we enter. It's the high school, and it's on Richard Montgomery Drive. That's Richard Montgomery. This is where we have voted for a long time. The purple are the different locations that I had listed earlier that we chatted with, trying to find someone that would be interested in hosting in 2018.
There's a community center that I know that the city of Rockville uses for a polling place. Have you had a chance to consider that? I'm trying to remember the name of the community center. It's in that precinct, I believe.
From Ellsworth?
Let me see if I can get it on my computer.
Ellsworth.
Are you familiar with it, Gianna?
I think it's Ellsworth. It's right down the street from the...
You don't have any choice.
I'm sorry, it's down the
It's
street.
right down the street from the city of Rockville office.
No, this is closer to St. Elizabeth. It's in the neighborhood. It's on the north side of Montrose Road, and it's. Let me see if I can find it.
Thank you. This is Richard Montgomery's aerial view, and we have well over 200 parking spaces, and the entrance is shown. It enters into the cafeteria area. This is the lobby area where we would be having people enter, voters. And this is one side of the cafeteria, which is
Oh.
our current polling room. It is
Would we be in a
huge
different
area.
room from the other precinct?
Pardon?
Would we be in a different room in the school from the other precinct?
No.
Why?
This is the same ballot style. So we would either divide them into two precincts in that room or have a consolidated scenario. Consolidated would be the optimal. It is the same ballot style.
What we would do is we would program the DS200s to accept either ballot. It's the same ballot style, so that means it's the same congressional district, same legislative district,
Yeah, I
council
understand
district.
that.
And the only difference is that whether you would receive, you would be sent, your ballot would be coded when you vote, when you check in on your poll book, so that the ballot for both precincts would be accepted in by the DS200 and drop into the bin.
So basically, if the election judge messes up and gives them the wrong ballot style, it affects how turnout is reported, but it doesn't affect how many votes any candidate got.
All the
I
candidates are the
understand,
same?
but you wouldn't have accurate voting results by precinct.
Right.
Well, that's not acceptable.
Yeah. Well, then we can set it up as two separate
Precincts.
setups. Yeah, two separate precincts.
All the candidates are the same all the way down?
But you've got to be able to report it.
Yeah.
But Mary Ann, what was it that you said was not acceptable? I'm not sure I
Well,
understood.
that they can't guarantee that the reporting by precinct
Right.
as to how many votes would be accurate because they could be mushed together.
Yeah.
It's not going to affect the candidates.
No, it won't.
Just the
Well, but there means the results won't necessarily be accurate by precinct.
Exactly,
Which they
exactly.
should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we would have turnout numbers by precinct. Because when you check in,
When you check in by
By
precinct.
precinct.
Right, right. But if you're studying the election for any purpose, you really want to know the turnout by
I just
by-
wouldn't
you
want to
know
be
more than
party
the
to.
turnout. Yeah.
So what other
What can we do to
Another
alleviate
room
Two
within
separate?
Richard Montgomery?
Do we have rooms?
set up two polling places in the
Do we have
room.
room to do that?
Yes, it's a high school.
Well, it's also a huge building. Why can't we be in two different rooms?
Because what we would encourage is to allow the voters all to come into the same way, because that's what they will do, and to probably station an individual to say, you need to go to room for 0405, and you need to go into check in over here at 0430. So we would have to separate them at the beginning of the area.
You know, like you have
Okay.
a partition or something? Or?
Well, we'd have to figure out something to set up.
You're
in
not
that
going to
room.
separate them when they come up to the poll book? Because most of them aren't going to know their precinct.
Well, some of them will.
Well,
But we would have
They don't know the
somebody,
precinct.
just as we have someone down at the Silver Spring Civic Building, checking people to see where they're supposed to vote, we would have someone
No,
there.
I have it.
Oh, where is it?
The place I was thinking of is called the Montrose Community Center, and it's a City of Rockville community center.
Okay, I can call the city.
It is, if you hold on, I'll tell you the address. It's on Congressional Lane.
Oh, yeah.
451 Congressional Lane, which would put it
in the precinct?
in the precinct. It's basically, it's like up in here. I believe it's about there.
And I don't want to be a naysayer here, but we're going to run into the same problem we ran in with all the schools camps on June 26th, but we certainly can reach out to the city of Rockville.
Yeah.
And it is a public building in the precinct.
Yeah, check it out.
If we can get it. I also have a question about Charles E. Smith. I don't know if that's the appropriate time now or later, but because that's also actually a pretty convenient location.
Okay.
When they say it conflicts with the school schedule, are they talking about June, November, or both?
Well, they don't close on election day. So we would have logistics on what we would do in order not to mingle the voters with the students. And then they have camps for June, and June is really the biggest issue in their mind, is that they actually are sponsoring their own camp as well as they're leasing in a camp for another organization. So they've got quite a significant number of students, and they're using up the spaces.
So the issue is that they're already committed to it, whereas for 2020 they aren't yet.
Right, and they would be very much interested after 2018 speaking to us with the options that they have available. And they would commit to us and then not bring in another activity.
Thank you.
So I think we looked at basically, that's the no electioneering at Richard Montgomery. And then we went into 1346.
All right, so we will go contact the city of Rockville with regards to the Montrose Community Center.
Good. Thank you.
I'm also assuming that the Woodmont Country Club is not an option, because that's also in the precinct.
Well, I didn't put it on the list, but yeah, I called them.
You did?
I talked to them.
Okay,
Yes.
not an option.
No.
That's what I figured, just thought.
What about Ring House?
They
Do
don't
they
want
have
the
any
whole
public
people.
facility?
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. Or the Landau one that's right next to it.
We talked about Ring House and parking. We do service people in Ring House with our nursing home program, but I did not talk to them if they would have about a large enough room to sponsor to host 2,700 people.
I bet they do.
It might.
They might, yeah.
Might be worth asking. I mean,
I haven't been in years.
I haven't either, but
We can speak to Ring House.
Just see what they say.
And Landau, what about that?
that's like right next door to Ring.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's another.
You mean the Lewis community that's across the street
No,
from
it's called the Landau
No,
Center.
it's called
I
the
think.
Landau House.
House, okay.
1799 East Jefferson.
So it's like north of Ring House. It sounds like it's
Just slightly, yes.
Okay, we can talk to them as well.
They're all like in the same neighborhood with
Yeah.
the Jewish Day School. It's like all right there.
Okay, media proposal. Margie, Alex,
Let's hit the light.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Let there be light.
Computer's going off.
Chris, can we have some light?
No. That's an eye opener.
So, Margie presented this to me. As you may remember, Gracie and I sort of formed this outreach or committee in the last cycle. I don't know that it's necessary to have a full committee this time, because I think board members are probably equally interested in sort of debating the details of this. But I did look at it, and I think we circulated it with the advance packet. And I think we tried to preserve most of what we did last time. The biggest change is that we've got, some proposed spending for the Korea Times. We haven't done outreach to the Korean community before. And so you'll see that on the fourth line. And I think the biggest change is that we would not do the Washington Post inserts in the primary, but we would do them in the general, because I think the general thrust is to spend more of the money in the general election with outreach than in the primary, given the turnout expected. So I offer this for anyone else's comments.
Thanks.
But I think Margie would like to get a decision from us today, I guess, right? So that you can move forward.
Do we need a motion, or is it by consent?
Alex, just briefly, what are we changing from the last? I'm sorry.
Well, it's,
Yeah. Well, the Korea Times is new.
That's new.
And the biggest change would be that we would be proposing not spending money on the Washington Post inserts in the primary. But by the time the general comes around, the fiscal 19 money is available. So we would be spending the money for the Washington Post inserts for the general election. But most everything else is pretty close to what it was at least in the general election from last cycle.
First of all, I recall when the committee was formed, because we formed two committees, the budget and the communications, and both committees, can only have two people so that we're not violating open meetings law, and that there was a representative of each political party on the committee. So I was a little surprised that when Gracie resigned, that someone wasn't selected from the minority side to serve with you on the committee, especially when there had been an interest and discussion in the beginning about who was going to serve on the committee. And then I'm curious, and I guess this is for Margie. Why are we spending less? This is nothing that than in 17.
In 17, if you'll recall, the board reallocated funds from other account codes to move into the advertising line item to give us the additional $7,720. FY18, that really is not available because of all the other reductions.
All the other reductions.
And so the $20,036 is the amount allocated by the county council for advertising. We did, in developing the FY19 budget, we did move some things around based on spending patterns to increase that up to $30,465, which is why you'll see things that came down between 17 and 18 have moved back up in 19 because we will have the additional funding available for that. But in 18 we do not.
Okay, so that, in our discussion on FY19, I guess we'll go into that. And I would think these, when you start going into the budget numbers of it and increasing, decreasing, or whatever, that should probably come before the budget committee. And
it did. The FY19 changes, yeah, that was all covered in the budget discussion before we move forward with the budget.
I don't recollect it.
It was all included in that spreadsheet, and I mentioned that some of it was realignment and some of it was changes that were needed. So
what's the deadline you need this by?
Well, I can honestly say that there is no deadline. The sooner I can start reaching out to the media outlets and start getting estimates on what they can give me for that amount and getting on the calendar, the better off we are. But there's no hard and fast deadline.
Why Washington Post? We need 2 Spanish ads. We already have Telemundo and all of that we are spending there. Can we have 1 English, 1 Spanish?
We do. We are covered under the Voting Rights Act, Section 203. And Comcast is an English-Spanish split. And there's also some other...
Radio America is Spanish.
The answer to your question, Nahid, is yes. We can just have 1 ad in El Tiempo Latino. In the past, the board had requested 2. So I tried to keep everything the same between FY17 and FY19, increasing it a little bit.
I just wanna,
but certainly you can...
Well, we already have Telemundo and we already have...
The bus signs that are provided free of charge, who designs that? Does the bus company design and have it printed, or
the print shop puts that together?
The county?
The county print shop puts that together.
Is somebody here okay to design the way it looks? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, does the board need more time to look at this and come back next month?
Yes. But I would just like to add to what Mary Ann said. When the Communications Committee was appointed, I did volunteer for it at the same time that Alex and Gracie did, and then I deferred to Gracie so that we would only have 2 members.
Okay,
the idea that the committee is being dissolved because we all care about the subject, we all care about the budget too.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we can't have.
Yeah, we can.
Well, it's not about who cares. I think that the point I was trying to make is that I think everyone wants to be involved in hashing out the numbers, reviewing all the stuff, that I don't know that it makes sense to spend our time in committee when we're going to. The only purpose for having a committee is that if some members are willing to defer to all the detail work that the committee has done, but if they all want to get the same level of involvement, I don't know that it makes sense to have a communications committee.
I disagree about the reason for having a committee, because I'm certainly just as interested in the details of the budget. I think part of the reason for the committee is that the committee members can then alert colleagues as to particular issues that come up and consult with them. Which we on the Democratic side did not have an opportunity to do with this particular document. I, for one, didn't remember about the, I see a 28% decrease from fiscal year 17. I didn't remember that we had reallocated that number. I do remember now that we reallocated it. I don't agree with the idea that the general election is necessarily the most important outreach because of the voter turnout, because we should probably be doing outreach to get judges, and we're going to have a harder time getting judges for the June primary than for the November general election in many ways. While I think it's a great idea to reach out to additional communities, I think it comes at a cost here, and I think that I want some time to think about kind of what the best approach would be. Now I realize that how I would spend the money might not be how you would spend the money, but to come to a meeting when we're not a member of the committee, I don't think we should expect people to have to respond on the spot. If we do, I'm voting against it.
If I could just make one comment in response to something you said, Mr. Naiman. The advertising budget that we're looking at is not a budget that we utilize to advertise the need for election judges. This is where the ads that are placed through this are the deadlines and the dates and the early voting information. Right. Election judge recruitment is handled through media advisories as well as Alberto's outreach and my outreach to the individual radio stations. So right. I just wanted to clarify that.
I appreciate the clarification. I would just say that we probably have one of the largest number of candidates in a Montgomery County election ever in the primary. There'll be a lot of people potentially interested in registering to vote and getting that information.
And that registering to vote is included in these.
So I mean, I think that we should think hard about anything we do that is less than what we've done in the past.
Alan,
is WTOP too expensive?
Yes, they in fact told us last time not to even bother.
Everybody listens to them. It's too bad.
It is too bad. It is too bad. But if I didn't have 5 to 10,000,
Margie has a great relationship with WTOP, and they do pick up a lot of our media.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't seem like there's urgency before the February meeting to do this.
May I suggest?
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to suggest that that the committee be reconvened before that time. The other thing, Alex, in terms of having a committee, and I think a lot of the points you make could be said about budget too, because everybody digs into that and has ideas and goes through each number. Well, where's this money? What's that? After Naheed and I do our presentation. But one of the things that's important in the media is coming up with outlets, media outlets, newspapers, whatever type of thing. There, always new things coming up or new information, and that's something that earlier research between you and another member, could maybe not just be hard and fast with what we've been doing in the past, but there might be some new outlets that you'd want to pursue.
Yeah, I don't see any urgency in voting right now. Alex?
Yeah, I mean,
There's no-
you know, that's fine to me. Did we spend less in the primary in the 2016 cycle on advertising than the general? Margie, do you remember or not?
I would have to go back and look. I have a feeling that we probably did, but I would have to go back and look at the final figures on that.
That was when we were rolling out the new voting system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I actually,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how we were on the paid money, but I know we were focusing on it. We might have even.
Well, I think
more
there,
money
yeah,
for
and I
that.
think, and it is important to include that distinction. There was a tremendous amount of outreach that was done by the outreach committee for the new voting system. But despite our request of the county council and the county council's comments to us that they wanted to provide additional funding for advertising, that those funds were not forthcoming. And so, you know,
When they adopted the budget, they made no changes.
they made no changes. So,
Do we
And
have
that was
a,
also then the state yanked back their
Outreach
money they were going to spend on
Right.
outreach.
right.
I guess. Yeah.
do we have a volunteer to work with Alex on the committee? David?
Okay.
So David is appointed to work with Alex, and we'll agenda this for next meeting. Lisa, we'll put this on the agenda. All right.
But I guess that with the understanding that we really want to make some decisions next meeting.
Yes.
So that Margie can move forward
Yes.
with contracts and stuff.
Yes, decisions next meeting.
Okay, let's move on.
Training schedule, Leslie?
This is the judges' training?
This is the judges, election judge training schedule.
So this is the overview schedule for the primary. We're looking to start on the 12th of March. Right now, that's dependent on the trainers that we hired. So I'm still being optimistic. The first about 12 days is train the trainer. It's not actually classes for the students, it's their prep time. We'll start on the 25th. As you can see in the notes, we have some days that we're not conducting classes, or if there's any special notation there. That first week is spring break, currently scheduled spring break for public schools. So we do want to make sure that we've got classes available. I don't know if you recall from the general election, but we had about 600 high school students that served, so it's a significant population that we want to be able to reach out to. Our off-site locations took a little bit to get set. We do have, and the abbreviations are at the bottom, it says off-site. So the WOCC is the White Oak Community Center. So they were able to give us 2 weeks in their large conference room, which is upstairs in their facility. And so that helps us on our East County judges. They won't have to travel up here. Silver Spring Civic Building was very gracious and gave us primarily 4 weeks. We do have a couple of conflicts for the third week that they have other events that they could not really work around. So we've got a couple of days that we would not have classes, but otherwise we have pretty much a solid month. I was unable to get Montgomery College Tacoma Park to commit this time, but the college was gracious and said that they would give us 2 weeks at Rockville. So we'll have 2 weeks at the Rockville campus in the Degelski building, which is right off of 355 and it's not Manatee, but it's the North Campus Drive. So that will certainly help us down county. So the Rockville actually is going to start on a Saturday and go for 2 weeks. So week 8, where it says 5/6 to 5/12, it's actually starting on the 12th, going through the 26th. We will finish up our last 2 weeks here, and then we're scheduling an end on the 9th of June. That is, of course, optimistic that we've gotten everyone in and everybody's trained. Typically, we've gotten better over the years at meeting that goal, but if we get a lot of procrastinators that want to wait to the end, then we'll do what we have to do to get them trained and get them assigned. Our walk-in practice sessions, if you don't recall, or Mr. Banoff, you may not know, we have a sort of an open lab where we set up the precinct and judges can come in and get help on whatever portion they didn't fully grasp from training. So if they want to play on the poll book some more, or if they've got questions on, provisional, can I fill it out a couple of times, we'll have trainers available to walk them through. So at that point, we've split our training staff. Some of them are during early voting, the others are here for the walk-in. Any questions?
Just, every year we always talk about how hard it is to recruit Republican judges. Was any effort made to find an off-site more up-county for training? Because we're always short of Republican judges. And
what do you mean, up-county? Everything up-county comes here.
No, you don't mean up-county.
I mean further north.
Oh, further north?
Further north than here?
Yeah. I mean, the demographics are that there's more
Damascus area.
there's more Republicans the further north you go.
Oh, I see.
And we're always short of Republican judges, so I just want to know, do we make any effort to have an off-site training?
Like in Damascus?
Or thereabouts?
That area.
We did not, but I can tell you, 2012, 10 and 12, we were actually at Germantown, and we couldn't fill classrooms. We were at MC in Germantown. We couldn't get it filled at all. So that would be Margaret's decision if she wanted to look at something up there. The folks that we have, they travel down this way as a part of their normal routine. They're sitting in our evening classes on the way home. They pull off at 270, and most of them are happy to get out the traffic for a little bit. So I haven't really heard the need for that. Our real request has been Silver Spring area, East County. And that's what we've accommodated.
But we do try. I know we do go out into, various events. Trying to do outreach out in those areas of the county, and specifically in order to try to get more Republican judges at times. I wonder if there's a specific, event that you feel we should go to, or a location that you think would be a good draw to get judges there trained.
I really didn't mean Damascus as a joke. One of the things is we know how the Damascus early voting center is the lowest attended type of thing. So I think anything we can do out in the community there to increase, awareness and participation would be a plus. It's a beautiful center. We wouldn't have to pay there, would we?
But
do you have to pay for these sites? I don't.
No, we don't go to places that we have to pay for. We certainly can explore.
I think we could. Didn't we get more money for that?
No. For training?
We made a big case for training. Yeah, and taking it off site.
Right, and we did two things. That as I understood the county council, was they wanted a more condensed schedule so that more individuals, instead of waiting till the last minute, so we're offering, 2 sites at all the time. We certainly can look at adding a German. Damascus is, if it were Clarksburg, I would understand.
Right. Well, maybe
because
Clarksburg.
There's nothing in Clarksburg to hold a class in.
There's not. Well, I know there's nothing for early voting, but isn't there something?
No, classroom? Not for
not a new shopping center there. There's no meeting room in that new shopping center.
There's. You mean the
outlet
mall?
Outlet.
No.
Just might be more attractive to Republican-oriented.
But if you go to Damascus, then the people from Clarksburg can come. It's not that far. Is it?
Okay, we will certainly look at Damascus. Okay.
Or thereabouts,
There's that free location is the Damascus Community Rec Center.
Yeah,
There's not a. I and Herberto have been advocating for a community rec center in Clarksburg because that's where the population is. There's nothing, believe me, we're concerned about what's going on up there in terms of the population explosion in the Clarksburg area. But we will look at a Damascus site for early, for training.
Yeah. Dave?
How much does how big does the room have to be? I mean,
Well, we have to, you need to understand, we have to haul all of the equipment up there. So it's going to be at least 2 DS200s. We're going to have.
So you need to have a big area. It's a good size.
20.
Secure and whatever.
You're going to have ideally 22 members, people in a class. So you have to have at least 11 to 13 poll books, as well as all of the supplies that come in the bags.
But,
and the.
But anyhow, we
express
shouldn't
home.
forget those people which they live up there. I mean,
It might help in Republican judge.
even the state chairman said that, so we shouldn't forget those people.
Could I have, or we have, could you email us, may I ask you, this with down here the dates of early voting, the date of the election? I'm talking about me giving it out to a group. How much they get paid, and the requirements for the part-time. A lot of the people I'm talking to understand that they like the part-time, whatever that is. But if you could put it all on one sheet of paper so I can reproduce it at home, I would appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
David?
Leslie, I think you did a great job in spreading them out. It's actually better in Montgomery College Rockville than Tacoma Park because Tacoma Park is so close to the Silver Spring Civic Building. And Montgomery College Rockville is convenient for those who live in Potomac, including Republicans. And it's also very convenient to 270 as we are here. So I also appreciate the fact that we're not just spending a couple of days in each of these off-site places, but we're spending enough time there that people may have choices of when they're going. So there's no but in this paragraph.
Thank you.
I just think that this is. I should also add, just because I know when Johnny wondered about this, you've also managed to avoid Passover and you've managed to avoid Mother's Day and Father's Day. So my congratulations for
And how long the class, if you could add to that, how long
6
each
hours
class?
is the longest class.
What if you would put it on here so I can hand this to somebody?
Okay.
Great, thank you. Just a synopsis of what it is.
That's it. We're done. Oh, future meeting.
No,
No, we have an executive.
we have an executive session.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But we can go into it.
All right, so we're
almost done.
Lisa put the schedule through the end of the year. And do we need a motion to adjourn and then go into...
Move we adjourn the public meeting.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we also need a motion to go into executive session.
I move we go to executive session right away.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.